Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers made their first cuts of spring training. No big surprises, but a couple notable things. There's a couple minor injuries to current Dodgers and a major injury to a former Dodger that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about one baseball pundit's guess that the Dodgers are going to make two blockbuster trades this season. That's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you will never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. My co-host is Vince Samperio, although it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And jumping right in, spring training continues. There's unfortunately the only real news in spring training is bad news. Anything that's not bad news isn't really news at all. Gavin Luck's news last week was definitely news and definitely not good. Anything else that happens in spring, it's just like, okay, well, that's a thing that happened. And we'll see if it means anything a little bit later. But there were a couple injuries that I want to talk about. And the ones that affect the Dodgers currently, hopefully aren't too big a deal. One of them, hopefully it's not too big a deal. The other one, I won't say it out loud, but I'll be thinking it's not that big a deal just because of who the player is. So the first one, the former Dodger, Justin Turner, got hit in the face with a fastball from Matt Manning of the Tigers on Monday in a spring training game. He went down immediately, bleeding profusely from the mouth or face, or couldn't really tell. Lots of blood though, and with JT's beard, the blood kind of mixing in with the beard and dripping and stuff. It looked pretty gnarly. Luckily, his wife Courtney posted an update on Twitter. She said this was probably, 5 hours or so after it happened. She said, "Thank you to everyone that reached out about Justin and sent prayers. We're home now and he's resting. Okay, maybe listening to the replay of the game. 16 stitches and a lot of swelling, but we are thanking God for no fractures and clear scans." So that's excellent news, obviously. Still probably going to keep JT out for a couple days at least, I would think, just because of the swelling and stitches in your face, it's a lot of it may depend on pain tolerance, and as far as how much work JT thinks he needs, they're not going to press the issue, but hopefully he'll be back sooner than later. And very, very thankful. Anytime somebody gets hit in the head, especially the face, it's a scary thing. We've seen a lot of bad situations from guys getting hit in the face, and this definitely could have been a lot worse. And I'm glad that it wasn't. JT will always be a fan favorite among Dodger fans, even though he's not on the Dodgers now. It felt like one of our own. And so very glad that he is okay, and hopefully he will fully recover pretty quickly and be back in action soon. The two injuries to current Dodgers, I guess we'll start with the one that isn't a big deal at all. If Justin Bruihl's mom is listening, I apologize. Justin Bruihl, he came into pitch in the ninth inning. It was an 8-0 game. The Dodgers were beating the Padres on Monday. And Bruihl came in, threw 5 pitches, a 4-pitch walk, and then hit the next batter with his first pitch. And David Freitas, the catcher, went out to talk to him. And pretty soon Dave Roberts and the trainer hustled out there. And Bruihl walked off the mound. And they said that it was a back issue, back tightness, some sort of back soreness, and it didn't look major. I almost wondered if, I didn't see him grab at anything. I didn't see the catcher motion to Roberts or anything, although he could have. It's not like we have cameras on everybody at all times. So maybe Freitas did motion to Roberts. At first, my thought was, I wonder if they knew that Bruihl was dealing with something. And so when he struggled like that, they're like, okay, it's an issue. But it's hard to see them sending him out there in a spring training game if he was at all compromised. Just spring training is not worth it. Maybe it's worth it to Bruihl because he is battling for a roster spot, a battle that he's likely to lose. But it doesn't seem like they would send him out there if they knew he was compromised. So Roberts must have seen something because he was out there pretty quickly with the trainer and they took him off. No real updates on how severe they think it is, but it didn't seem like they think it's very severe. The other one is Tony Gonsolin. During backfield workouts on Monday morning, he sprained his ankle, his left ankle, I believe. And, we don't have video of it because it didn't happen on a televised game. Maybe somebody took video of it. I haven't seen any video of it yet. But he was immediately tended to by the trainers, taken back to the clubhouse. Dave Roberts said that he doesn't think it jeopardizes Gonsolin's readiness for opening day because he's pretty well built up. And so he will skip his scheduled start on Wednesday in spring training. That doesn't mean that, he has to move back 5 days because, there's always time to get somebody in a game. So maybe he pitches Thursday or Friday. Maybe it is a full 5 days after his scheduled start. Just depends on how the ankle reacts. I'm sure Roberts said that because Gonsolin was so built up that he thinks it's mostly a non-issue as of right now. Of course, when Gonsolin had his forearm strain last year, Gonsolin himself downplayed the severity of it, and then he ended up missing almost the entire rest of the season. So anything could happen. Sprained ankles are weird. We've all sprained ankles before, I assume, and sometimes like you roll your ankle and you're like, oh man, I just screwed that up bad. And the next day you feel fine and you almost forget that it even happened. And sometimes you're out for weeks. And so hopefully this was something not too major and that Gonsolin will, rest it, ice it, and be back in a few days. And we will forget that it ever happened, basically. The Dodgers do need Gonsolin in their rotation. He's one of the 5 guys they're counting on. I am going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk about a couple guys who, according to some guy at Bleacher Report anyway, a couple guys the Dodgers might look to add to that rotation during the 2023 season. So I want to thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and free. If you've ever been in charge of hiring somebody, you know that it can be a major pain, almost you feel like you are taking a big gamble and wondering if you're ever going to find the right candidates. LinkedIn can help you do that. Just go there, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, I want to thank you all again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. When you're done here, for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. You can win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as you know, we are also part of that Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In this case, your team is the Dodgers, and we appreciate you being with us every day. If you're watching on YouTube, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comments section. If you are listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you through social media or email or whatever. I'll give you all the contact info at the end, like I always do, but it does mean a lot to have you guys here hanging out with us. So I mentioned Dodgers starting rotation. Tony Gonsolin is currently hurt, but hopefully not hurt for long. But over at Bleacher Report, there was an article a few days ago, a guy named Brandon Scott wrote this. The headline says, predicting where top players involved in MLB trade rumors will finish the 2023 season. And there's some interesting ones. Chris Sale to the Phillies, Josh Donaldson to the Rangers, Chris Flexen to the Orioles, Max Kepler to the Mariners. Okay, yeah. Brandon Woodruff to the Blue Jays. Brian Reynolds to the Yankees. Reynolds, of course, has been a Dodgers trade talk candidate. Doesn't look like that one's ever going to happen. But then the last two, number 7 and 8 on Brandon Scott's list, are two pitchers going to the Dodgers, Corbin Burnes and Shohei Ohtani. And I'm going to read you the paragraphs on both of them. For Burnes, he says, as previously mentioned, the Brewers aren't looking to trade their best players unless they're non-contenders leading up to the deadline, but Burnes has acknowledged a fractured relationship with the franchise that would lead one to believe the end is in sight. If the lack of a long-term deal is not disappointing enough for Burnes, the fact that he went to arbitration with the Brewers for roughly $750,000 and the team won has to leave a stain. The Dodgers, however, should be motivated to pounce. They boast an impressive five-banner rotation with Julio Urias, Clayton Kershaw, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, and Noah Syndergaard. But Kershaw, May, Gonsolin, and Syndergaard all have a serious recent injury history that makes things tenuous for them as a group. On top of this, Burnes would likely be the best pitcher among them at this point. And then the next one, he just jumps right in. And, oh, by the way, Shohei Ohtani, too. He says the Dodgers sort of shocked the world, but not really. Ohtani to the Dodgers predictions already exist, but it will still be a shock to the system to see him trade the other LA franchise's colors for the legendary Dodger blue and white. Sorry, I stumbled over that sentence because this guy pretended that the Angels are an LA franchise. So I have a hard time reading that out loud. Going back to the article, adding Burnes and Ohtani would completely change the World Series conversation at the deadline. Ohtani has already communicated his desire to play for a contender and has been non-committal to his long-term future with the Angels. At spring training, Ohtani said he does believe the Angels are committed to winning. The question is whether it finally pans out. As backbreaking as it seems to trade a once-in-a-lifetime player like Ohtani, it's becoming more obvious he sees a brighter future elsewhere. One would also have to assume a trade package for Ohtani, commensurate with his rare ability, would be historic. And, two interesting predictions. He doesn't necessarily come right out and say they will make both of these. But I mean, the point of the article, the premise of the article is predicting where these players will finish the 2023 season. So I guess he's predicting both of those guys going to the Dodgers. That's some huge prospect capital the Dodgers have to give up in those trades. Burnes has 2 years left, one more year after 2023 on his contract. As we all know, Ohtani is a free agent after 2023. So at the trade deadline, you'd be trading for 2.5 months of Ohtani plus the postseason, really 2 months of Ohtani plus the postseason. You'd be trading for a year and 2 months of Burnes plus 2 postseasons. There's definitely value there. Both guys would command a hefty price. And in order to get both guys, the Dodgers have to give up some. I mean, just looking at Ohtani, the Dodgers are going to have to give up some top prospects to get Shohei Ohtani. And when you know as a team, well, we have a decent chance of signing him in a couple months anyway. Yes, it would definitely help for 2023. And so, excuse me, there is value there for sure. But it's like, I mean, the Angels would be looking for a package starting with, maybe even Diego Cartaya and one of their top 2 pitchers, either Bobby Miller or Gavin Stone. And I don't know, for a rental like that, when they have a decent chance of signing him anyway, I'm not convinced the Dodgers would do that. Now, if the Angels were willing to be overwhelmed by quantity, Dodgers have a lot of quantity. They have pitching prospects. They have hitting prospects. They have guys available, including some guys. Andy Pajes is a good prospect who may never get a chance to play with the Dodgers. He could be, they have guys like that. Michael Busch, kind of the same boat. They have guys, Jose Ramos, and then on the pitching side, they have a lot of pitchers who aren't quite at the level of Bobby Miller and Gavin Stone. But for that matter, Gavin Stone wasn't at the level of Gavin Stone a year ago right now. If the Dodgers had traded Gavin Stone a year ago right now, none of us would have batted an eye. Oh, okay. And now Gavin Stone, he pitched again on Monday. the dude is good. His stuff is so good. And so, you never know what's going to happen with prospects. Um, it would take a lot to get Ohtani. And then we're talking about Burns too. It would take a lot to get Burns. Burns has an extra year of control over Ohtani, not quite as valuable just because Burns only pitches. And Ohtani, oh, by the way, he also hits really well. It's there's a lot of things working against the Dodgers getting both of them. Honestly, I feel like when we factor in the prospect capital it would take to get Ohtani and the fact that they signed JD Martinez, so they don't really have a place offensively for Ohtani to play. Obviously Ohtani would be an upgrade over JD Martinez, but he's less of an upgrade than he is over somebody else. If Ohtani was replacing, a Zach McKinstry guy on a roster, yeah, that's, if Ohtani could play shortstop and replace Miguel Rojas, send Miguel Rojas back to the utility role, great deal. But Ohtani only plays DH. JD Martinez only plays DH. And well, Ohtani is a better hitter than Martinez at this point. Not as big a gap. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. Throw in the prospect capital. I just don't see that trade happening. I'd love it. Especially if Andrew Friedman could do it in a way. Like I don't want the Dodgers to trade Miller or Stone. And I ideally don't want them to trade Cartaya either. Those three guys are kind of my untouchables. And not to say they're untouchable to the Dodgers, but to me. For me, I don't love the idea of trading any of those guys. Anybody else on the prospect list, I could get on board with. There's some guys I'd be sad to see leave. I've been impressed with Ryan Pepio this spring. I think he's kind of found some of what his changeup had lost, and so I'm excited about him. I'd be sad to see him leave. For Shohei Ohtani, I think Pepio, he's been on this podcast. He's a friend. He would understand that I'd understand, and beyond that, there's nobody on the list. Dalton Rushing, yeah, that would be a bummer. I think he's going to be a really good hitter, but I'd understand. Really, it's just those top three guys. And a year from now, I might be saying, I can't believe I was willing to trade Dalton Rushing or Nick Nastrini or whoever it is. But right now, that's kind of how I feel. So I just don't see it happening for Ohtani. When it comes to Burns, I think the Dodgers could get a Burns deal done without touching those top three guys. And, 3 or 4 prospects, headlined by a Michael Busch type, maybe Busch and Paez, and then, a couple lower pitching prospects, something like that, maybe gets the job done in a trade for Burns. Maybe they throw in a little bit more if they want to add in Willy Adames, if they want to kind of make that trade and get him at shortstop for this year. There's options. And I would love to have Corbin Burns. I think Corbin Burns is very, very good. And I would love to have him on the Dodgers. I think he could really, really succeed in Dodger Blue. And I would like to see that. Obviously, I'd love to see Ohtani in Dodger Blue too. I don't see it happening in a trade this year. Burns, though, I think is a realistic possibility. I wouldn't say it's a likelihood, but I think it's a possibility. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. What do you think about either of those guys, both of those guys? I wonder, like, as I read this, I'm like, does Brandon Scott understand he's saying the Dodgers trading for 2 of the best starting pitchers in baseball at the same trade deadline? No, it's a possibility, but it seems hard to get both of those guys. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section or on, social media or whatever. I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk a little bit about the first round of roster cuts the Dodgers made. No huge surprises, a couple names that are notable that we'll talk about. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. All right, I am back. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. It does mean the world to us. We love talking Dodgers with you. We've been doing this. I just saw my time hop. It's been 4 years since we made the announcement. If you're new here, Vince and I used to do a weekly podcast called the Scully Avenue Podcast. We used to do that together for almost 3 years. We did 138 episodes, I think, of that show on a mostly weekly basis. We would miss every once in a while. But for the most part, we were pretty good about that, doing it weekly. And then in late 2018, David Locke, who is the radio announcer for the Utah Jazz, which happens to be Here where I live here in Utah. I grew up in Southern California. I've been in Utah since I came here to go to college back in 1995. So I've spent well over half my life here in Utah. David Locke reached out to me. He and I had met one time before, and not like he didn't know we had met because it was at a function. We had gone up to my family and I had gone up to the Delta Center to watch the year that Donovan Mitchell was in the slam dunk contest, wherever that was held. They did a viewing party at the Delta Center, or whatever it was called at that point. It's now back to being the Delta Center, which makes me glad that I never stopped calling it the Delta Center. Don't tell my neighbor who works for Vivint. He'd be offended that I never called it the Vivint Arena. But anyway, beside the point, I went up there and David Locke was emceeing that, and he was wandering around the crowd, and he actually stopped and harassed me about my Dodger shirt because David Locke is a Giants fan, but he also has good qualities too. Anyway, he reached out to me in late 2018 and asked if we would be interested in going to a 5 days a week format and changing the name of our podcast to Locked On Dodgers. And Vince and I talked about it, and we decided to do it. And March 25th of 2019 was our first episode as Locked On Dodgers. That was the Monday of opening week, so a few days before opening day that year. And we started doing it, and we haven't missed a weekday since. We've done a couple bonus episodes too, so we are well over 1,000 episodes at this point. It's been a lot of fun doing it, and we are showing no signs of stopping. We are still enjoying it, and we get a lot of good feedback from you guys. You guys are enjoying it too, so thank you for that. And if you, I'm going to put one more plug. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do right now. If you're not watching every day, I know it's a commitment. We do try to keep this to 30 minutes because we don't want it to overwhelm your day. I know what it's like to look and see, oh, the new episode of my favorite podcast is out. It's 2 hours long. When am I going to find time to listen to that? We are trying to do 30 minutes a day so you can listen to it on your commute to work, or, while you're doing your bathroom stuff in the morning, or, whatever it is. And we love talking Dodgers every day. And for our sanity and yours, we keep it to a half hour. I'm looking at our list. The longest we've done in the last, it looks like we had a 36-minute episode, but most of the time it's between 28 and 33 minutes. And that's out of respect for your time and ours. We are really trying to do that for you. So, I know it's a commitment, but we would love if you listen every day or watch every day. It mean a lot to us. Vince and I, we both have other jobs, but this is, we put a lot of time and effort into this, and we do make some money on it. And the more people listen to it, the more money we make. So in addition to the satisfaction of knowing that more Dodger fans are listening and interacting with us, puts a little coin in our pocket, and no complaints about that. With that all said, I'm going to move on to the last topic of the day, which is that the Dodgers made their first roster cuts of the spring, and there were no huge names on it. It looks like they cut 9 players, 8 pitchers, and 1 position player. The position player was outfielder Yusniel Diaz, who, if you remember, Yusniel Diaz was actually one of the prospects that the Dodgers traded to the Orioles in 2018 for Manny Machado. Diaz ended up back with the Dodgers this offseason and is back in the minors again. I'm looking right now. I don't know if he has ever played in the big league. I guess he did. Oh, he made his big league debut last year with the Orioles. He got 1 plate appearance and he struck out. That's his baseball, his big league experience. And then the Orioles released him, and he signed with the Dodgers just about a month ago. And so he's been in spring training with them, and didn't do. Looks like he got 5 plate appearances. He went 2 for 5, but 2 strikeouts. Just he's not ready for the big leagues yet. But I think the Dodgers are at least a little bit excited about him. That's why they brought him back, and hopefully they will be able to help him reach his potential. So he's the 1 position player who got cut. The other 8 were pitchers: Dylan Covey, Landon Knack, Robbie Erlin, Nick Nastrini, Brian Hudson, Jordan Yamamoto, Nick Robertson, and James Jones. Of those guys, Robbie Erlin pitched in the big leagues for the Dodgers last year. I think he made 1 start. And other than that, it's mostly prospect guys. The other one, James Jones was in the big leagues with the Mariners like 6 or 7 years ago and hasn't been back since then. He was an outfielder for a while. Now he's back to being a pitcher. And so, no surprise there. The only one, and obviously it's not a surprise, but probably a disappointment to him, is Jordan Yamamoto. He has been a big league pitcher, and the Dodgers signed him. And I think Yamamoto probably had hopes of, impressing in spring and earning a spot on the roster. And instead, what Jordan Yamamoto has done this spring is pitched 2 1/3 innings over 3 games and allowed 6 runs, 5 earned, including 3 home runs, 5 hits and 2 walks. That's a whip of 3. So he's averaging 3 base runners per inning, hits per 9, 19.3, home runs per 9, 11.6, walks per 9, 7.6. Does have or 7.7. Does have an impressive strikeout rate, 11.6 strikeouts per 9, because he struck out 3 batters in those 2 1/3 innings. Kind of shows you why strikeouts per 9 isn't as useful as strikeout percentage, because he faced 14 batters. So 3 strikeouts and 14 batters isn't super impressive, just over 20%. Not nearly as impressive as 11.6 strikeouts per 9, because if you keep giving up hits, you get more chances to strike out the next guy. And he every once in a while would do that. 19.29 ERA this spring for the Dodgers. I said it when the Dodgers signed him. It was in our episode. I remember, because when our episode got lost, if you remember a few weeks ago, we had a Friday episode that the cloud ate for a couple days, so we didn't get it out until Sunday afternoon. When that episode got lost, and I thought it was lost forever, there was part of me that was relieved, because I had said out loud, Jordan Yamamoto is bad and isn't going to make the team. And I got nervous because there was somebody else. When the Dodgers traded for Miguel Rojas and they traded Jacob Amaya to the Marlins, and I talked and I said something about, hope Jacob Amaya's mom's not listening, but the dude's just not a big leaguer. And then Jacob Amaya's cousin commented on the YouTube. So I'm glad it was nice, even though I wasn't saying nice things. Same thing about Jordan Yamamoto. Seems like a nice guy. I have nothing against him. I don't think he's a major league pitcher. I don't think he brings anything to the Dodgers. So I was not surprised at all to see him struggle, and now to see him get cut. And honestly, I'd be surprised if they even hold on to him in the minor leagues. I just don't think Jordan Yamamoto is ever going to be a good big league pitcher. There are a couple other guys. Dylan Covey has some potential. Landon Knack has potential. Nick Nastrini has a lot of potential. So among those guys who got sent down to minor league camp, there's some potential there, but not in the Jordan Yamamoto camp, probably not in the James Jones camp. And there will be a lot more. I think I saw that brings the Dodgers down to 59 players in camp. Obviously right now, about 8 of those are off to the World Baseball Classic. So that will thin things down a little bit. Some of those 59, that includes Gavin Lux, who is still currently in camp, technically not doing anything, and will go on the 60-day injured list as soon as the Dodgers need that roster spot, presumably for Jason Hayward. But it's still a crowded camp. There's still at least like 50 guys who are available, and obviously they can call over guys from minor league camp when they need to too. So even more than that, but that is the first round of cuts. We'll see more over the next couple weeks, and we'll start to see. There'll get a point where we start to see guys we thought maybe would have a chance to make the team. A guy like Justin Bruihl, I talked about earlier. I don't think he's going to make the opening day roster, so it'd be interesting to see how long they hold on to him before sending him to minor league camp. A lot of different guys like that who, there's cuts. That's part of spring training, and it's a sad time sometimes, but ultimately we see the actual Dodgers roster start to come together, and that's exciting. So that's going to do it for me for today. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Now that you're done here for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. You can win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy baseball draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you aren't watching or listening to Locked On Dodgers every day, like I said, we'd love if you add 1 or 2 days a month or a week to your rotation. It would mean a lot to us. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vince Samperio. I'm on Twitter at Snidog. and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com, and our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.